Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook Live. As Kevin just ducked out at the last second there. Yes, he's the mastermind behind the scenes here. Andi Petrillo, we are talking today, obviously, it's Canadian Women in Sport in partnership with CBC Sports. It's all about change the game, creating supportive leadership. And I'm joined by two giants in their sport today. Pleased to have them with me. Carmelina Moscato, an Olympic bronze medalist in soccer, and also the Women's League One commissioner in Ontario, and Desiree Scott, two-time Olympic bronze medalist representing the Maple Leaf, two former teammates as well, right? Yeah. Yes. Nice little reunion here for the two of you, but we're going to have a focus today on leadership. And obviously women's role in that, where it used to be, where it is now, maybe where you like to see it go. And just a little question here to kick things off. I guess first things first, Carm, if I were to just tell you to picture what a leader looks like, what comes to your mind first?
Selfless, somebody who's willing to put in the hard yards, like very knowledgeable, but very much about maximizing others and their potential. So somebody who leads by example, role model, walks the walk kind of thing, but also has that, as a young leader, I know I'm missing sometimes experience, but I'm willing to put in the hard yards to get that knowledge. And then obviously just going through life and building experiences is make you a more potent leader, but all those things.
Desiree, a leader to you.
Yeah, everything that Carm said, I think hits it on the nail, but leads by example, vocal when they need to be, someone who's empathetic, can feel and connect a group, and someone, who just leads by example and continues to have that growth mindset and how can they make the group better.
I think we can all agree that those are, incredible credentials that no matter who you are, if you're going to be a leader, are so key. Carm, I'll come back to you though. At what point do we start to recognize that diversity in a leadership role is also important?
Well, the diversity of thought, we know how much that can do too. There's like statistics right now. People are really driven by data, and I totally get that. But we talk about boards. I'll start there. If you have 30% representation of women in a boardroom, at minimum, that changes the conversation. It adds diversity of thought. So to add people to a group, to a staff, to an organization that have come from all walks of life, to make sure that any idea is well-rounded, is supporting. There's no blind spots, essentially, is really what we're trying to do. And I think a lot of times historically, we all have these biases where we attract more people of our own likeness. We hire our friends and we engage with the person who's going to agree with you on what you said because, they're kind of the same, cut from the same cloth. And I think it's up to leaders to challenge themselves with being uncomfortable and being with people who don't agree with them all the time.
Yeah, they reinforce what you already believe in. It's like our algorithm culture as well, right? Whatever we search online, then that ends up being what's advertised to us, and everything just gets reinforced of what we already know, that we don't even realize there's a whole other world there. And Desiree, I mean, also I'll pose that question to you, just how important it is to have, a female voice, right down to different cultures, different color of skin voice. Like, why is that so important?
I think the big key there is just perspective and the differences of perspective across the scale, whether, male, female, race, all of those different things, they all have their little nuggets of knowledge that I think I can't answer all those questions. So we need to diversify so that we can get perspective from across the board. I think that's super key.
Who was your role model, Desiree, growing up? If you were to look at somebody who was a leader figure in your life that, you really admired.
Yeah, I think leadership has become such a important conversation as of late in my career. I think early on, it wasn't a huge conversation. The people who were the leaders were like the best players on the team, or the person who scored the most goals, like you have to lead. So I think now it's become just a bigger conversation and a really important one that should have happened as I was younger. Like my role models were my big brother, because I've started playing soccer because of him, my big brother. Thierry Henry, he was scoring all the goals. I used to watch him on the soccer field. So it's like the people that were in my mind and within my circle are who I saw. But the conversation, I think, started a lot later in my career.
Carm, how about you?
Yeah, that's it's so funny you say that, because my brother as well was the first role model that I ever had. Similar thing, just wanted to be like him in the sense of, I knew he was a pretty good center back, which is ironic because I ended up a center back, but I was never meant to do that. All to say though, leadership, I would agree with Desi. It wasn't a conversation. It was sort of until, I don't know, 28 years old for me. And now as a 36-year-old, I'm understanding more and more of what that means. But it's because maybe we didn't have enough female leaders that were there to tell us and impart their experiences and knowledge on us. It was more like we had a lot of male coaches. Again, not bad. My favorite coach of all time is male, John Herdman. But all to say, I think it's important to introduce these themes, topics, and opportunities at younger ages to start embedding these qualities and behaviors and mindsets in little girls. And that just becomes part of their coding and their wiring, that they're going to be society's next leaders. We don't have to wait to start these conversations. They're capable of doing it. And we can see that in grassroots sports. So, my role model, I guess you didn't even answer your question. My role model was Charmaine Hooper. And the reason was, and I'll tell you exactly why, not because she's a superstar and was leading the Canadian, she was sort of the icon of that era, but I actually met her at a soccer expo. She had her shoes off, sitting cross-legged, signing autographs, so humble, and actually spent 20 minutes speaking to me when I was a provincial player. And it was by accident and by chance. She signed this thing with, a little logo on it in Metro Sport or wherever I worked. And I put it on my mirror, and it didn't leave till I was 25 years old. And I just remember the connection I felt with this woman. And it didn't matter anything about her, about the fact that she was a Black woman, that she was a star. She made me feel important. Mm-hmm. That's all I remember. And for me, that's a leader.
Yeah, I love it. I find athletes at first, so when you play, it's so easy to look up to an athlete, right? Especially, somebody like me, if I'm watching and you see women playing and you see women being successful, so then I want to get into sport. But now it's, how do we take it to the next level? Who does the athlete look up to say, when I'm done, I want to be a coach. When I'm done, I want to be a manager. When I'm done, Carm, I want to be a commissioner. Because to your point, you're still looking up and you're still seeing a lot of men in those positions. So maybe I'll just start with you, Carm, because you are, a commissioner right now for Women's League One. What gave you that confidence? What put you on that path to say, I'm going to be in a leadership role, even when I'm done playing?
I don't know, Des. You can maybe back me on this one. I wasn't like a leader my whole career. I sort of have a really big personality, big energy, and I never lacked confidence. And I don't mean that in a way where I never struggled with confidence, but I've never lacked it. It's never not been there. If I was not feeling confident, I would use my big energy. I would compensate in another way, maybe joke my way out of a situation. But I guess for me, I never felt intimidated by the opportunities. I always felt like there was something to prove. Maybe, that's the genuine honesty there, something to show that women can, that I definitely can, that if someone's talking about football in the men's game, it's football. Like, you're not going to outsmart me in that. And that's because of all the work I did to be this person. So there's a bit of hard work, putting yourself in this situation. Yes, it's vulnerable. Yes, it's hard. But I believe you have to do that, not only for our generation, but the next and the next and the next, because this has to normalize. We cannot be the minority at all times in a room. And I mean, minority being just women, there's the the sex part. That can't be the case. And it's not part of my belief system. So I will continue to put myself out there and be open about my journey and how I get to where I get to.
Mm-hmm. It's so great when you even see Rian Wilkinson coaching. Bev Priestman, obviously named now the head coach of the national team. We know Melissa Tancredi, is part of, the behind the scenes and the physiotherapy and strength and conditioning aspect as well. We're starting to see women in those different roles. Desiree, how important is it to also know and see more women getting into those roles, that is also a career path? Because the big question a lot of times is, what happens when you're done playing? Can you still stay in sport?
Oh, exactly. I think it's exactly what you said, seeing women in those roles more often. You want to see what's possible, the opportunities that are available to you. And we need to educate women more on what's available. Get the word out there and let them know that, what's available to the man is also available to the women. And we're just as capable of fulfilling those roles and doing it well. And we're just as passionate. We have so much experience and wealth, but I think it's about encouraging women to take that step. They need that encouragement, but also the knowledge to know what's out there and available. Like the Rian Wilkinsons, the Melissas, the Robin Gales who are doing the mindset
Amazing.
stuff. They're all living in my current environment. And I never would have thought, maybe I can help out in that sense. But it's seeing it, it's at right in my backyard. And so that you're like, you start to think of the potential for you as a woman.
How much does media play a role in that, Desiree? And I'll go back to you on this, from not just airing women's sports maybe more on TV, but doing the types of interviews with the women who are behind the scenes who you wouldn't normally see, right? Because again, the message we're trying to get out there is that once you're done playing, there's still room for you in the sports world. I mean, where does the media, do you think, play a role in that?
I think they have a huge part to play, not only making us visible with what we do on field, but getting them to know the human side of the athlete or the retired athlete, knowing like where have their paths gone now? What are they doing now? Keeping up with, the athletes, what they're doing currently. And I think, seeing it, the more often we can see it, the more it becomes real and a possibility and a dream for younger girls, and also us veteran players to try and get ourselves out there more in a leadership role.
Carm, I have to go back to you on this one, because it's funny when a male athlete retires, there's almost an understanding that he'll either get a job in management with a team or he'll become an analyst, right? A major network is going to reach out to him, sooner rather than later. You just know this because that's been the trend.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen a lot with female athletes, but Carm, you and I this past summer, covered the Canadian Premier League. I was the host. You were my analyst covering a men's professional league. Did you even realize what you were doing at that moment, the path, the trail that you were even blazing? Because I can tell you right now, I've covered a lot of men's sports leagues, and the analyst across from me, usually not women.
Yeah, it's so funny, because I honestly felt I didn't want to, in my heart of hearts. I didn't want to draw attention to that fact at the beginning. It was one of the first shows we did, Andy. I think it was on my Instagram story, what an honor to cover the men's game in this country, etc. But to your point, not knowing the magnitude of that, because it isn't normal. It hasn't happened. And the hardest part of the job, believe it or not, was not working with you, because you're the best. The hardest part
nice save.
The hardest part of the job was genuinely learning the human side, what Desi said, the story of the men in the league. Where did they come from? That's not common knowledge to me. They're not necessarily household names yet. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest challenge. But when you put me in front of the game, when you and I are watching the game and then preparing for halftime and post game, that's not the hard part. That was just like a joy to watch football, to speak about it, to speak to you with your unbelievable soccer mind as well. And we were a great team. But that was the easy part, because that's the competency that many women have, especially coming from the cohort that is our national team.
Yeah. Well, it's so important, because how often do we hear men commentating on women's sports? And that's completely fine. But you never really hear about a woman's voice commentating on men's sport. And Des, do you want to see more of that? How nice is it when you're watching a men's game, but it's a woman who's an analyst because she knows the sport?
Well, yeah, it's refreshing. We have Carmelina, an incredible soccer mind, doing her thing. We have, the Kaylin Kyles of the world making her mark on, the media and covering the men's game. I think it's just refreshing to hear a woman's voice on the men's game. You don't hear it enough. So again, I'm a hard push for getting the women in there for sure.
All right, we're talking leadership. If you're just tuning in to our Facebook Live, it's all about leadership in the world of sport as well, and in particular women, and wanting that diverse leadership right down for when it comes to gender, when it comes to color of skin as well, and getting the different perspective. And Carm, where do you think most of the help is still needed when it comes to getting women in more leadership roles? How do you do that? Is it convincing federations? Is it sitting on more boards? Is it just simply getting the message out to more women once they retire to get their coaching license? I mean, just where do you think, maybe all of the above, but where do you think most of the work needs to happen?
Those are all part of my strat plan, so well done. Honestly, if I'm just, again, candid with you, it's all the things, yes, decision-making roles, etc. But I think we're at a point in our history where we just need women to do it and without asking permission. So what I love about sort of Abby Wambach and Glennon Doyle and a lot of their advocacy work is a lot to do with building their own tables. They brought up something that I think is worth sharing at this point, and they talked about this concept of proximity to power. So a lot of women in past generations, if they were allowed to get the one seat in the 12-seat boardroom, they have this proximity to power, and guess what they do? They'll shut the door behind them because they're the ones that got the chance, and they're going to make sure that's a scarcity, like that's mine. And they're not going to extend. I think we're at a point in time where we just need to build new tables. We need to build more opportunities for more women and not ask for permission to do so. And not in a way that's, it's almost ingrained in us to feel that that's deviant, that's rebellious. If we do that, that is not it. That is genuinely building our own paths and our own opportunities and elevating women and empowering women to do more than they think is currently capable of, which is a shift. It's just going to take a lot of little shifts. I don't think there's going to be this grand change. That's never going to happen, but we need to start making it awareness in our own environment. So it's a call to action to anyone listening to this to say, change what you can in your own environment to allow more space for women to lead, to grow, to empower, to educate, all the things we're talking about. So that's my opinion on it. There's small shifts.
Yeah, and it's something worth noting because you're completely right, and obviously Abby Wambach talking about that in years past, it was still such a coveted role, and I think a lot of women, once they would get a certain position, they were that token female, right? And then they never wanted to relinquish that spot. But years have gone by, and so many the mentality has changed in many ways. Earlier this week I was speaking to a woman by the name of Jennifer Wolf who works in MLB, Cleveland Indians organization. She started a chat group for women in baseball. And she was overwhelmed by the amount of women who signed up to this chat group, but more so, even more overwhelmed by the amount of women who wanted to help each other out. So Desiree, do you think it is it's an antiquated thought now to be like, women don't want to help women and women are the reason why women aren't succeeding anymore because we just put each other down? I mean, is that just an old way of thinking?
I think it is. Especially with the climate of the world right now, it's all about, bring each other with you. Can we make the world better? How can we do it together? And, I think, Carm, you hit it on the head with that in terms of just creating your own opportunity and having the courage to do so, and bringing people along for the ride with you. We're learning and growing every day as leaders in our community, but can you bring people along? Can you let them know what's available, what you're learning, extend the information that you've learned, and let people know what's going on and the opportunities that are available.
Yeah,
definitely.
How crucial is it, people in positions of power? And I also mean, when you're in power, you're in a position to do the hiring. How important is it as well for those people to be of this mentality, to see that, you're not just, recognizing your own subconscious bias, right? Because sometimes too, it is just a subconscious bias that you don't even realize you're excluding women, or you don't even realize sometimes you're excluding, people of color because you've just always known something to be a certain way. How key is it to also get people in those positions who are more open-minded?
Yeah, it's what I've learned very clearly, especially in the last 2 years of my career development, has been, it's a values thing. It's a human values thing. Remove the sex from it. It's now, to me, that if you don't align, and equity and equality is a value. So if it's not ingrained in the person's values and the way that they execute themselves professionally and personally, it's probably not going to align, and we're probably going to have conflict anyway. So I believe it's up to the individual themselves to educate themselves. So I'm not going to be the person in the room every time saying, you shouldn't say that. That's actually, void of this value that I carry, which is equity and equality. I'm not going to educate people along the way. It's what I stand for, and I won't stand for it, and I have to walk out of the room, or I have to change the seat. Or I just have to live a life of my values, so I don't impose that on anyone else, because we are a long way away, and there's some generations that think the way that they think, but I'm not going to be I might be their greatest teacher because I left the room.
Yeah, sometimes that could be the loudest message, that's for sure. Where do you want to, if I'll go to you, Desiree, and a question that I just asked moments ago to Carm, where do you think most of the work also needs to be done with getting more women staying in the sports industry even after they're done playing?
Yeah, I think obviously it starts in our small networks. I think that's key in the language we speak and how we communicate. You know, it starts in your small networks, and hopefully that web extends into your communities, your provinces, and etc. For me, I think also, um, again, it's the availability and recognition of what's available and getting that message out. I think it's so
Mhm.
simple, but it's sometimes a message that's missed. Just knowing what's out there, especially in sport, but also the life after sport, and that's just seeing it more often, letting people know what people are doing off the field and out of their sport, and just
Mhm.
making it more involved and letting people know. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, it's so true. It's about getting a message out there, which is why we continue to have these types of conversations. But it's also about getting those bodies in the right positions too, right? And making sure they're in those spots of leadership. And another conversation, Carm, you and I had last year during one of our broadcasts as well, was about hiring the right person for the job. And again, there still seems to be this thinking that if you hire a woman, you're filling a quota. At what point do we change, to your point, even Desiree, when you talk about like language and stuff, like even change the language where it's like, no, you actually are hiring her because she is the right person for
Mhm.
the job, right? Like it just seems like everything from language to mentality, how we look at it still seems to be different when it's used with women.
Yeah, I think this whole competency discussion, as somebody who believes highly in being the most competent person in the room at all possible, it's probably a compensation mechanism that I've always had to be and tried to be and such. But when we talk about the broader picture of this, I think it's a lot of awareness for companies, organizations, clubs, academies to put out gender neutral language. A lot of even advertisements or jobs are suggestive in their language that it is for men. I've did a lot of research on this recently. So, offering childcare for, you want to get more moms and coaches as coaches as an example, but they have like 3 kids. So if the mom's going to be a coach and you really, really want that, and she has that ambition, so maybe you offer some sort of daycare option for that 1 hour that she's on the pitch, progressing her own career. Like there's flexibility should be built in for women, because when it's void of that, it continues to create more of the same, more men, only men can do it. Oh, where are the women at? There's a lot of job opportunities now. You have to work 6 days a week to make a part-time salary. Okay, well, I don't think that's possible for me. If I have to have a full-time job, coach 6 days a week, and make a part-time salary, I might do it, but it doesn't necessarily suit. So how can we make these programs more inclusive and consider both genders and our roles in society? Because they're shifting, but we still know most households in Canada, I don't know the statistic, I will find out, how many households have their mother as the primary caretaker. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, Carm, all you have to do is go and look up all these articles right now in the pandemic and the amount of women who have left the workforce more so. And then when people started to go back, it was the fathers first going back and the women staying home. I mean, you're right. And there's a lot here that, listen, we're not here to fight nature, right? It's a woman who gets pregnant, right? It's a woman who deals with those physical changes to her body. So I guess, Desiree, I'll come back to you. What was your reaction when Fifth Pro just came out recently and said that women now, players, would be paid up to 14 weeks, 2/3 of their salary, but now making that mandatory? No female player should lose her job if she decides to start a family, and she should not go without money. She shouldn't, lose her spot. Like, what was your reaction when Fifth Pro didn't quite go the distance of the WNBA, but in some ways following in their footsteps in respecting the fact that women will have to step away a bit when it comes to, even female athletes have to step away for maternity leave, but now being paid for that because they already, don't make a lot of money, but, kind of evening the playing field there a bit.
Yeah, I saw that news and I just remember being like, it's about darn time. I mean, I remember I saw the news and I played with Sydney Leroux, who famous, Canadian US soccer player. And I played with her professionally in Kansas City when she had her first little one, Cassius. And I remember just her having to balance her work life, soccer, she was a complete superwoman. And I think it just is coming credit to the role that mothers and athletes play and how incredible it is that they want to be able to still play, come back. Like, it's such a challenge already. The fact that women are now supported in that, and something that is so beautiful, I think is a huge step. And it's about time, is what I think.
Yeah, because there are just different challenges that women will face compared to men. And you're right. I think it's such an unfair narrative where you say, well, look, see, women, not a part of it. See, they can't be there. They can't be successful because the system in many ways is set up, against them. So it's kind of changing all of that. I'm going to leave you too, obviously, with the last word, here. And I guess, where do you see yourself right now in a leadership role, Carm? Where do you see that responsibility, embracing it? And then sometimes does it actually scare you having that kind of responsibility?
No, like I'm fully aware, what platform I have, how far it reaches, and my voice matters. I'm aware of that fully, and I take a responsibility in that. And I think the responsibility I have is I keep saying this, and I say it in different ways all the time, but whatever arena, whatever area, scope you can impact, do that. If it's like one team at a club somewhere in a community, do that and do that well. If you have a global reach, do that well as well. So for me, it's sort of like growing into my own leadership qualities, understanding what the responsibilities are and living it. And I'm sure I'll screw up along the way. It's not about being perfect. That's a whole other discussion. It's more about just standing in my power and knowing what I represent and not wavering from that for anything, for anyone, or for any dollar amount. You never know what things come your way, right? You have to almost sell your soul sometimes, and you're like, no, it doesn't align with me. So standing for what you believe, and this will grow. I'm sure I'll become a leader of maybe a club, maybe a province, maybe a country, maybe FIFA. I don't know, but whatever. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to probably be a similar person throughout with the similar values.
See, I need to drink your juice every morning. Yeah, I need to have that. Well, see, the reason why I asked sometimes, about being scared by that responsibility, just a little personal note here, right? Like there's a lot that I do in the world of sports, and sometimes I just think if I screw up, then that means everyone's going to think all women are then going to be a failure, right? Or if I decide to leave a certain position, then they're going to say, see, no woman, no woman, can cut it, right? Like you just feel that responsibility of like, I got to be perfect and I got to keep going, because if I don't, we're still judged with blanket statements, right? Where sometimes men are still judged individually. So that's why I asked if there's any kind of sometimes scare or fear with that type of responsibility. Desiree, what about you? Where do you see yourself in a leadership role?
Yeah, I think, Carm, firstly, you could probably change the world, girl. You got me all hyped there.
Come on.
But no, honestly, like within my community, Winnipeg, go Manitoba. I find I just want to help the grassroots, help the women, keep them involved in sport, just from the basic level of like, have them fall in love with the game, lead by example, show my passion for the game, and allow them to see what's available. Again, that conversation, and just to inspire girls to stay involved in sport, lead in the ways they can. Leadership evolves over the years. I'm still evolving into the leader that I am. And I think finding your uniqueness and how you can lead and what your voice is, what your message is, and then stand by that, like stay true, be you. It's a big motto I try and live by, and
love it.
And then just shed your light through the community and lead in the way you can and have that impact, because know that you can have that impact.
Very well said. Well, I really appreciate the two of you joining me here today, Carmelina Moscato, Desiree Scott. You have done incredible things on the pitch, and it's also so incredible to see what you do off the pitch as well, and appreciate you taking the time here today. I'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, Andi. Thanks, Desi.
Always a pleasure.
Very good. Two former teammates, Carmelina Moscato, Desiree
Miss
Scott.
you, Desi.
Yeah.
Love you, girl.
Yes.
Olympic bronze medalist, and yes, Carm, right now also Women's League One Ontario commissioner. Let's talk about being a leader. Carm, retired, and she's taking a leadership role and also doing TV analyst work as well, and covering the men's game. And that was something, that we discussed. It's really important to hear a woman's voice covering the men's game, and not just always pigeonholing a woman to say, okay, well, you're a woman, you just cover women's games. Why? Right? Like, why? Men cover women's games. It's great. Why can't women cover men's games, vice versa? And Desiree Scott, two-time Olympic bronze medalist, and continuing to make the national team proud. I've got two other special guests who are joining me right now. So we're going from soccer to media and track and field. So I think they're going to jump on in. And by the way, everyone who's been writing in comments, Facebook Live, we've been seeing them. They are fantastic comments. And thank you so much. So at the bottom of the screen, I'm assuming it's the same for everybody. We got Meghan McPeak, play-by-play announcer in basketball for the WNBA, Washington Mystics. And yes, the G League affiliate of the Washington Wizards. Only woman, only Black woman doing play-by-play. Really appreciate you taking the time. Khamica Bingham as well, in track and field, an Olympian and a Pan Am Games bronze medalist. Meghan, how you doing?
I am doing well, Andi. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a long time since we've seen one another. It's so great to see you. You're looking fantastic. Khamica, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am really good. Right away, I got to point out, Meghan, I'm loving the shirt. Why is female scratched out?
That it's been part of a campaign that this shirt company has been doing, and I actually did a panel around like spring of this year, right before COVID kind of took over our lives, with the DC high school girls athletics program, and it was the best in their field, not just athletically but academically. There was a handful of girls at the high school level. I want to say there was 50 to 75 of them. They were handpicked by the athletics board here in DC and invited to Capital One Arena for brunch and a panel with myself and a few other women who are in sports industry, whether it's media or academics or administration. And this was actually the gift that they gave us for being on the panel. So it was pretty cool because I know, I believe it's Player Society does this shirt as well too, and it's a hot item to try and get your hands on, but I felt it was appropriate for the conversation.
I love it. Judged by achievements, not by gender. And we just finished having a conversation as well about, just the vernacular around certain things. And I think that that's so key because, even when I was younger, getting into sports broadcasting, I would announce myself as a female sportscaster. And then I remember it was, somebody who I worked with turned around and said, why do you feel the need to include your gender in that? Do you think guys walk in and say, I'm a male sportscaster? Actually, no, right? Because as women, we've been taught for so long to associate our gender with it. And because there were so limited roles in, especially in sports media, it was almost like announcing your gender was something that you would do pridefully. And then you realize it was actually a hindrance in many ways. Today's focus is on leadership. And Khamica, I'll begin with you. I did the little exercise with Carm and Desiree to start things off. So I want to do the same with the two of you. So I guess the first question then, Khamica, would be when you think of a leader, what are the types of things you think of? What do you see?
I see someone that, doesn't leave anyone behind. I think someone that wants to help bring everybody together and think of success, not just as an individual, but just bringing out the best in everybody. I think if you can encourage and bring out the best in everybody, then that just creates an environment where there is compassion. You can still have competitiveness, and people can be their authentic self. People can, reach their best potential. And also just qualities like confidence and
Who was a leader for you?
Out of sport, for me, I guess my mom, which is a very cliche answer. Just because, she had battled a lot of storms, especially with her health recently, just battling an autoimmune disorder. And, when she's like having her tough days, and even like for her to encourage me, and help build me up on my days where I'm not as encouraged or I'm dealing with injuries. And I just think when you can think not of yourself, but, just help somebody else be their best potential, I think that is like really like a leader.
Mm-hmm. Well, hoping for all the best for your mom, and it's so great that she's an inspiration to you. Meghan, what do you think of when you think of a leader?
I think of someone, to kind of piggyback off of what Khamica said, as well too, someone who talks the talk and doesn't just say what they're going to do. They actually do it. They lead by example, and isn't always just trying to tell people what to do, but they're the type of person that will say, we should do it this way, and then they do it because they know that if they're going to be the one that is going to instruct people on what to do or tell people what to do, they need to also step up and do the same. Because if I'm going to follow you, I need to know that you're going to put in the exact same amount of work as I am. And you're not going to just make the rest of us do the work and you can just sit back and have a cocktail and watch us do it. So that's what I think of as someone who doesn't just, talk the talk, but they walk the walk and stand up, and also, have the people who are following them have their backs when something might get rough or things get tough. So I think it's someone that leads by example.
There's this great image that I actually still keep on my phone to hammer home your point, Meghan, and that's, these people are pulling a boulder and there's a boss standing behind them telling them to pull harder, pull faster. And then the other image is of a leader standing in front of everybody doing the major pulling, saying, come on, let's go, right? The boss is behind, but the leader is in front doing the grunt work with everyone as well. Who was a leader for you, Meghan, in getting into broadcasting and in particular, play-by-play? Again, this is still a rarity for women to be doing play-by-play in sports.
I think for myself, there's many different people. Like Khamica, my mom, she was a working mother and always made an effort to not only do her job as a nurse, but also put my brother and I first, and my father as well too, and make sure that we had everything we needed before she even worried about herself. I think that shows a type of leader. And then, my brother getting me into sports. And I look at people like that. And then from the broadcasting standpoint, Hannah Storm, Doris Burke, they're two women who were doing things in media that were not heard of and were unheard of. You look at Hannah Storm now, who is one of very few women who are calling, football games, Monday Night Football, on radio. And then, Doris which is crazy that in 2020, she made history being the first female analyst on ESPN radio to work the NBA finals and conference finals. So I look at women like that as well, Robin Roberts, who even through her health battles, still pushing forward and making sure she's taking care of people around her, but herself last, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Looking at leaders here for everyone joining us on our Facebook Live. And so some staggering numbers here, even when it comes to women in coaching positions or athletic director positions here. So 28% of women are in athletic director roles in post-secondary institutions. And then in coaching roles in youth sports, because obviously we're keeping it Canadian, 3% are, women who are coaches in men's sport. But it's not like it gets any better for them to even be coaches with women. The 26%, in youth sport. And Khamica, being in track and field, when you looked around, I'm just curious what your experience was like in your, actual sport, who the leaders were, what they looked like. And did you ever have a moment, maybe sometimes as a woman, where there was something you needed to talk about, but you're like, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like track and field is especially within like coaching positions. And when you make like national teams like the Olympics, typically it is a very male dominated sport. There are a lot of like, our relay coaches. And, for me being a 4x1 relay member, that's a place where we can really practice like team leadership. But, when you have male coaches and it's all mostly male staff, it's a little difficult in terms of just the relatability, and their leadership styles are very different than what like a woman leadership can offer. So yeah, there are times definitely where as a team it applies pressure on us to be able to speak up in moments where we feel like it is just male dominated. You feel like it's not really relatable in any sense. But I feel like that's where, for me, like me and my teammates, we had to really come together and just support each other as women. And I feel like when we did that, we were able to create an environment of compassion and trust, and we were able to be successful as a relay team.
See, that's unique, right? Because track and field, you do a lot of things on your own if you're a sprinter. And then unless, of course, you're on a relay team and you have that kind of camaraderie there. How can that change for you? You know, again, when I was speaking to Carm and Desiree, we were talking about women once they retired from the national team, whether they themselves got into coaching or management roles or even athletic therapist roles. Where do you see that happening in track and field? Is it not? Is it? Where does the work need to be done?
I definitely feel as though we need more female representation, whether that's, as athlete, a coach, or, in hierarchy positions. Just because I feel as though, without those role models, without those leaderships, athletes like myself and even development athletes, the younger athletes that are coming up, they struggle to see themselves like in those positions. And I think it's important just representation of that because, I feel as though female athletes and male athletes, we respond to very different things. And I think when you have that relatability and you have somebody that just kind of understands, the emotions that come through, an athlete, a female athlete and a male athlete, they respond to very different things. So I find if you can find that connectivity and you can find, have a coach that understands those and understands that process, it can help to build both women and men, to success in sports.
And the differences are okay. I feel like that's another message we need to get out there. Everyone always thinks that because you speak to a male athlete differently than a female athlete, that somehow that's bad or that makes one of the gender weaker than the other. No, we're different. And, that's actually okay. And that's why diversity is so key. And Meghan, I was earlier talking about even diversity in media and how nice it is to not just hear a woman's voice covering a woman's sport, but when you're flipping through the channels and it's a men's league and you can hear a woman's voice. How key is that? Because I know you were also working here in Toronto for quite some time before moving to Washington. Did you ever get people, maybe young girls who came up to you and said, like, I heard your voice and it was just so unexpected because I was watching a men's game?
I think now I've gotten it since moving to DC more than I did during my time in Toronto, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that if you're not exposed to watching at that time when I was with the 905, if you're not exposed to watching that, then you're not going to know that a female was doing it. And then even my time doing pre and post and halftime for the Raptors, that was something that wasn't really known and heard of. So, you might be driving home and miss the end of the game because you happen to just finish your shift at work. And then all of a sudden a woman's voice pops up to start the post game show. That's not normal either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make it normal without the air quotes. But I think it's just something that young girls need to be exposed to, much like young girls have to be exposed to athletics to be able to see themselves doing that. And I know at least for myself, just looking at the landscape in women's basketball, for example, and you look at the more and more we see former WNBA players now becoming head coaches in the NCAA. Most recently, a couple years ago, Tina Thompson at the helm at University of Virginia, and then very recently, one of the best legends in the game, much like Tina Thompson as well too, is Kara Lawson at the helm at Duke, one of the most prestigious programs in the country, in the United States. And now you have these young girls that are getting coached by these women who played the game. It's very different than, getting coached by someone who may not have played the game, but knows the intricacies of the game and can coach. They coach it differently, though. It's very, very different, much like both of you said. Speaking to a female and a male athlete, you can speak to them differently, sending the same message, but have it delivered differently. And both athletes will understand what you're trying to say. It's just how you deliver it. So I think when it comes to media as well, too, and you look at the landscape starting to shift with more females covering men's sports and speaking on men's sports, when we get to a point where I am not put on a firing squad of 21 questions when I walk into a room and men want to quiz me about my knowledge of sports, and then I walk circles around them in that quiz, I will be happy when we get to that point, because as much as it can be frustrating, that's actually one of my favorite moments is when I'm in those situations, because I'm typically very observant and quiet. And I just listen to the conversation and listen to what they're saying. And then they, realize a woman's in the conversation and they want to see what she knows. And then, you know, off one question, I can answer 10 questions and basically shut them up. And it's like, and then I just walk away smiling and smirking because they thought they were going to get me and they played themselves. So I think when you have little girls that start to see more and more women in a role that is predominantly male, it then becomes normal. And I know a quote popped up, and you know, it's very poignant right now with what's happening with women in the sports industry. You can't be what you don't see. And if
Yeah.
you don't see it, then you can't be it. So
Yeah.
I think we need to see more of it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I want to get back into media coverage as well, and how that plays a role in it. And you're so right. How many times I would walk into a room, oh, you're a sports host. Oh, can you name like every single captain on the entire, you know, NHL teams? I'm like, can you? Like, it's just without fail, right? It's just always how women are treated when they say they're in the world of sport. Khamica, from an athlete's perspective as well, especially track and field athletes, I mean, you're so powerful, so strong, you know, obviously really fast. I'm wondering what responsibility you've also taken on with younger girls, maybe even in younger boys, in leading them, you know, in the world of sport, using that platform for good.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I've been really muscular, you know, going through sports, and um, I've kind of really spoken about, I've opened up about body image, and I think that was something that a lot of young girls had insecurities about, and you know, felt as though like it drove them away from sport because, you know, they felt though as though like, you know, a muscular body wasn't as feminine and that would take away from their femininity. And you know, I just opened up about my insecurities about that when I was younger, and just embracing, you know, my body and how it is used to do, you know, great performances and create so many opportunities for me. And that, you know, it's you have to just kind of stay away from that stigma of, you know, girls need to look like this and boys need to be like this. And so, you know, like I love to just step on the track, and, you know, I'm proud of the body, and what my body can do. And, you know, when young boys come and they're like, oh, I can beat you in a race, like I love to just, you know, go there and show them up as much as I can. But yeah, I think it's really important, as what Meghan was saying, is it's really important to see, you know, like you can't be it if you don't see it. And, you know, that's been something that I've been really passionate about. I've been a part of like Fast and Female, which are organizations that try to help girls stay in sports longer, because I wouldn't be where I am without sports. And, you know, I feel as though society kind of pushes females in different routes. And I don't want girls to feel as though they need to take a different pathway just to, you know, just follow behind the stigma. So that has been something. And I'm working on starting a little business, which is going to be like motivational speaking and help to have events to help girls see like their power and their strength and embrace that in any area that they do. So
Well, it's really key what you also talk about when it comes to, you know, body image for, you know, young girls as well. There's a lot of body shaming that goes on, but yeah, here you are as an athlete, so powerful. You know, I was recently doing an interview with some athletes on eating disorders, actually, and how 1 to 5% of the population is affected by it. Close to 30% of high performance athletes are affected by it. So I think it is so key when you sit there and you talk about confidence in the way you look and being powerful to be able to do your sport at the best of your ability. And it's great that you recognize that that's a message that needs to get out to young people as well. And I mean, I appreciate you doing that as well for so many of the young girls who could fall down a different path. And I guess that goes back to, again, that leadership role of having women in there. Now, I also looked up stats, and there are men as well who, you know, can suffer from eating disorders, and I don't feel like they have the proper representation, but it's mostly with, you know, with women as well. But I guess that goes back to having that diversity in leadership, because how do you as a young girl go to a man and say, I've been body shamed? He's going to be like, I don't know what having a curvy body is all about. Like, he doesn't know what having hips is all about. He doesn't know that, you know, suddenly your training bra has turned into another kind of bra. And you're like, how do I help you with that? Right? Like, so how important is it for you, Khamica, to get that message out?
it's really important. I think, you know, for me, I had those moments where, you know, you see your body changing. And then even then, like you'll have, like I've had male coaches comment and tell me like, you need to be thinner, you need to be more leaner, you need, like, you know, you just have people of power try to dictate of how you need to look in order to, you know, just within sports. So you find that off of the track, you know, just society, you want to, you know, there's an image that, you know, the media has portrayed as, oh, this is what a beautiful woman should look like. You know, that's what their body should look like. And then in the sports world, you have, oh, this is what your body needs to look like in order to be an amazing sprinter. So, you know, I've had a lot of moments where I've suffered with anemia and I was under eating just because I was trying to be, you know, super, super thin. And that's not necessarily what my body responds to. So my body was breaking down because, you know, I was trying to listen to these male figures that were trying to tell me like what my body needs to be. And instead of just being the healthiest, leanest, best version of myself to do my sport, I found like once, you know, I just embraced that, there was just so much freedom. And I feel as though if we have more women in leadership roles that can just really understand that process, it's not easy to just drop weight just like that. You know, we're not as lean in different areas. So I just have that understanding. I think is really, really important. Definitely in my sport on a development or a professional level.
Well, it's great that you're sharing that story. Meghan, going back to media, do you think media is doing enough to even highlight not just incredible female athletes, but to your point, what women are doing behind the scenes? Because often you don't see them, right? We'll see the athletes on the field of play, but what are they doing in other roles? Do you think we as the media, and I'll definitely, you know, point the finger at myself as well, are we doing enough to highlight that?
I think we could be doing better. We can always be doing better to not just highlight, as you said, you know, the female athletes and the male athletes on the field and on the courts and on the pitches, but as well too highlighting the men and women behind the scenes. Whether it's, even if it is a male accomplishment, you still want to highlight that. We should just be highlighting, we should quite simply just be highlighting everybody, because that can aid in building confidence. Someone, you know, male or female, if they're working on a project, and they're trying to produce something and they're, you know, having second thoughts about themselves, and if this is good enough, if you lift that person up, it's going to do wonders for their confidence. I know when, you know, I'm having a bad day or I think I had a bad call of the game, to hear someone who didn't have anything to do with my game call tell me that you called a really good game, knowing I think it was bad, that gives me some positive confidence, because they may not know how to do my job, but they felt watching or listening that they enjoyed it. And that's more for me, and helps me more, because it meant that it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I didn't do as poor of a job calling the game. So I think when it comes to highlighting the accomplishments, we need to do it for both sides. But I think the media, we in the media, we can do a better job when it comes to the women's side of things, both on and off the floor, in front and behind the camera and microphone. So I'd like to see more and more of the female accomplishments being spoken about, because that means that we're getting to a place where we can then begin to drop the first female, and it just be, oh, you know, Andi Petrillo did this today, or Khamica Bingham did this. Like, we highlight them and we can drop the first female of doing something. Like, again, 2020, and it was the first time an analyst worked the conference and finals in the NBA. Like, it's 2020. We shouldn't be there still. And then even Monday Night Football, most recently, 2 days ago, that's the first time that we have had an all Black officiating crew, not just Monday Night Football, period. But then it's also on the stage of Monday Night Football. Like that, it's 2020. We should not still be making firsts, which is crazy to me. But knowing my job and what I do within the NBA umbrella, there still has not been a first female full-time play-by-play announcer. So we still have more firsts to do. So I definitely think we can do a better job, but we are making strides and progress.
Yeah. And to your point on that, Kim Ng being named the first general manager of a men's, you know, professional team in North America. And she's been doing this for decades, right? And she finally gets named now. But to your point, again, that's a first. So you start to make head waves, but then you can't help but raise an eyebrow and say, but 2020, there's still, you know, firsts going on. Khamica, if I were to ask you where you would like to see changes in leadership when it comes to track and field, overall, I mean, obviously that's the area of expertise for you, whether it's getting more women, whether it's getting more diversity. Where does it start for you if you were to sit at a table and someone says, I want your opinion on how we can make our leadership better in track and field?
I think you got to start at the top and then go to the bottom. So I think if we have, more women in positions of power, whether that's a head coach, anything that is high performance director, I think if we have more females at the top, then, you have a different conversation, different perspectives that are just starting at such a top level that can feed down into the athletes. And then from there, when you have more coaches, I feel as though, you're going to have a lot more athletes that, are comfortable, happy in an environment and would want to stay longer. And I feel like when you have those positions, you have that representation there, then we can help to increase a lot more female sprinters, female athletes in the sport of track and field. And as Meghan spoke about, I think we need a lot more media coverage on the female side. I think in our sport, it is very male dominated. We're quick to know who the fastest man in Canada, in the world is. And when it comes to different events, when it comes to the female side, it's kind of like, oh yeah, they're there too. Like they're great too. It's like, I think just having that coverage, I feel like if we have more people really understand our stories, really be able to speak out things that, where we can be role models to younger girls. I think that is really important for us because, people wouldn't know that, oh, even professional Olympic athletes struggle with body image sometimes, or, they have connecting issues with their coaches. And sometimes they need, a female to talk to because the delivery is just different and they can respond and compete at their best level. I think at all levels, girls need to see that and they need to hear that and they need to know that so that we can just overall help to affect,
All very well said. And your voices are part of that chorus. And we really appreciate you taking the time here today to share some of, your experiences and just your opinions and thoughts on how we can make this better. And so many great responses that we've been getting for people watching right now on Facebook Live. We really appreciate everyone tuning in as well. We hope this was really informative. And again, it's keeping the conversation going, but also coming up with ways to now put things into action. And it sounds like everybody here who I've spoken to today has done that in their own way, and it is greatly appreciated. Meghan, Khamica, really appreciate you taking the time. Earlier, we had Carmelina Moscato and Desiree Scott. Thank you to them as well. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'm Andi Petrillo, and continue to watch out for more of our conversations here on this platform because they're good ones. See you later.